advisor, Seshadri. I recently graduated from University of California, Santa Cruz. And to set some context for this work is about designing practical algorithms. So designing algorithms that will work well in practice. So how they perform on real world instances is of interest to us. And we'll be talking about a particular algorithm and a problem, which is click counting, and an algorithm for that we proposed recently. So large graphs are everywhere, right? We have social networks, protein interaction networks, citation networks, routing networks, epidemic spread networks. Oftentimes, these graphs, they run into millions of nodes and billions of edges. So for example, I have 4 graphs here, 4 real-world graphs. As we can see, their sizes easily run into millions of nodes and tens of millions of edges. And so given such big graphs, a natural question is, how can we make sense of these graphs? How can we say something meaningful about them? How can we summarize them? How can we characterize them? How can we compare 2 graphs? So one way this is done is by looking at counts of certain patterns in them. So patterns like cycles, triangles, cliques, and so on. And the pattern that we'll be focusing on today is the k-clique. So k-clique, as we all know, is a set of k vertices all connected to each other. So we can have a 3-clique, which is a triangle, a 4-clique, 5-clique, and so on. And the reason cliques are important is because they often have some significance in the context of the phenomena that the graph is trying to represent. So for example, in the case of the Facebook graph, a clique of size 5 could point to a set of 5 friends. And indeed, one of the salient features of real-world graphs is that we observe that there are many more triangles in these graphs than what one would observe in a random graph of the same size. So these structures and their counts, they can actually tell us something about the phenomena that the graph represents. So cliques have been used in a lot of different applications. They have been used in dense subgraph discovery, in community detection, in graph visualization, graph modeling. So for example, if you're trying to model a real world graph, you may want your graphs to reflect the click counts that are observed in the real world graph that you're trying to model, and so on. So all of these papers that I have listed here have used click counts in some or the other form. So when we talk of cliques, there are multiple ways that we can talk about them. We can talk about maximum clique, which is the clique of the largest size. There's maximal cliques. So these are cliques that cannot be increased further. So meaning that there's no other vertex in the graph that I can add to a given maximum clique to get a bigger clique. And then there's k-cliques. So k-clique is simply a set of k vertices all connected to each other. And this k-clique could be sitting inside another bigger clique. So just to give an example, here I have a toy graph and I have listed the maximum clique, some of the maximal cliques, and some cliques that are not necessarily maximal. Okay, so when we talk of clique counts, there's 2 ways we can talk about them. We can talk about global k-clique counts. So that's the count of k-cliques in the entire graph. And we can talk about local k-clique counts. So that's the number of k-cliques that every vertex and every edge is involved in. And these kind of counts, they are useful in applications where we may want to weigh the vertices and edges proportional to the number of cliques that they are a part of. So just to explain this further, I have a toy graph here, and I've listed down all the cliques that one is a part of. And so all of these are the local k-cliques of one. So our goal in this work is simply, given a graph G, we want to obtain all global and local k-clique counts for all k. That's essentially the goal here. So to set some terminology, we'll use n for the number of vertices, m for the number of edges. Alpha is the degeneracy of a graph. This is a parameter that shows up in a lot of graph algorithms. We don't need to go into too much detail, but suffice to say that it is a measure of how dense the graph is. And typically for real world graphs, this is usually small. So alpha can take values anywhere between 1 and n minus 1. And even for million size graphs, million node graphs, alpha is usually around 100 for real world graphs. To define it more formally, if we let capital T be the set of all subgraphs of G, then the degeneracy is simply the max of the min degree over all of these subgraphs. So for the purpose of this talk, it just suffices to know that this is a measure of how dense the graph is. So a lot of work has been done for counting 3 cliques. Some of that has been generalized to counting 5 cliques. And more recently, there has been work that has tried to generalize this beyond k equals 5. Some of it has succeeded to count up to k equals 13, but not beyond that. And the reason why clique counting gets harder as k increases is because as k increases, the number of k cliques blows up. So here I have those 4 real world graphs. As we can see, the number of 7 and 10 cliques in these graphs easily run into trillions, if not more. And so enumerating these is not an option. So the more recent works, they either use some kind of randomization and approximation to estimate these counts, or some kind of parallelization. In this work, our goal was to use neither of those. And I'll explain what I mean by that later. So in terms of what was known before this, in terms of the theoretical results, there's a trivial algorithm that runs in time n to the k plus 2. For this estimates the k clique count for a given k. There's also a trivial algorithm that runs in time 2 to the n times n square, which is able to count for all k. Then the first major development in this area was by Chiba Nishizaki back in '85. They proposed an algorithm that runs in time m times alpha to the k minus 2. This is for a given k. This is a clique enumeration algorithm. It's a backtracking algorithm. And much of the subsequent work is actually based on this algorithm of Chiba Nishizaki. And we'll actually look at this algorithm later. There's a matrix multiplication algorithm that runs in time n to the omega k, which is able to estimate the count of 3k cliques. Here, omega is the exponent for matrix multiplication. And our work, latest work, which I'm going to talk about in this talk, is Pivoter, which runs in time n to the n times 3 to the n over 3. And in this time, it is able to calculate the counts of all k cliques. So it's the first improvement in almost 4 decades. In terms of practice, what is known is, so instead of talking about these algorithms in terms of the various different parameters in terms of which their running times are defined, I'm going to focus more on their practical aspects. So there's color coding, which is an approximation algorithm. It's a sequential algorithm. It gives global counts. There's edge sampling, there's graphed. So the idea here is that you're given a graph and you subsample the graph by deleting every edge with a certain probability. And then in that subsample graph, you count the number of k cliques. And if you scale it by a scale it by an appropriate quantity, then you can get an unbiased estimate for the number of k cliques in the original graph. There is path sampling. There's escape, which are more recent works. The problem with all of these is that they work well only up to k equals 5, typically. So of course, this depends on the kind of graph you're dealing with. But the kind of graphs that we are looking at, which is million node graphs, real world graphs, these typically work up to k equals 5. So more recently, there has been work by Finocchi et al. They give an exact algorithm. It's a distributed algorithm. So they use MapReduce for this. And they're able to count up to k equals 8. Following this was our work in 2017 called Turon Shadow, which was an approximation algorithm. And it was a sequential algorithm, and it gave up to k equals 10. Then there was KCList, which is a parallel algorithm. So essentially, it's a parallel version of the Chiba-Nishizaki algorithm. It gave exact counts, and it worked well for up to k equals 13. And again, it gave global counts. This work, Pivoter, gives an exact algorithm. It's a sequential algorithm. For almost all the graphs that we tried for, it gives the k-click counts for all k, and it gives global as well as local k-click counts. Around the same time was this algorithm called CountClicks, which is again another parallel algorithm based on the Chiba-Nishizaki algorithm. And it works well for up to k equals 13. So just to describe the result in short, we gave an exact click counting algorithm called Pivoter. In practice, it gives more than 1000x speed up, even over other parallel algorithms. It gives global as well as local k-click counts. It works for all k for a large number of graphs that we tried in practice. And in theory, one can show that this, in the worst case, will run in time n times 3 to the n over 3 for global counting. And for local, this just gets multiplied by n and n squared. And in terms of practical results, so this is a plot showing the time taken by Pivoter versus the time taken by KCList. So KCList was the only algorithm available at that time that was even able to count beyond k equals 13. So it's a parallel algorithm. So we parallelized it using 40 threads. The red bars show the time taken by KCList for 4 of the largest graphs that we tried for. So the x-axis shows the 4 graphs. The y-axis shows time in seconds on a log scale. And so what we did was, so KCList takes a k and gives a count of k clicks for that k. So we took the max k in these 4 graphs, which was 61, 201, 67, and 51. We fed this k to KCList. And we compared the time it took for KCList to be able to count these k-clicks versus the time taken by Pivoter. So in 3 out of 4 cases, Pivoter was able to count not just the number of this k-click, but all k-clicks. In one case, which is Orkut, it took about a couple of hours. In just a factor more time, Pivoter was also able to count the local counts, the local k-click counts, the per vertex and per edge counts. And KCList had not terminated even after 3 days. Okay, so before I dive into Pivoter, it would be useful to get some intuition for how cliques work. So cliques are recursive structures, which means that a subset of a clique is also a clique. So this suggests that one way of discovering all cliques in the graph could be that I find a small clique, I look at its common neighbors. From the set of common neighbors, if I include a vertex in the clique, so I increase the size of my clique, then I found a bigger clique. Now I can look at the common neighborhood of this bigger clique and so on, and continue this process. And if I do this exhaustively, I will have discovered every clique in the graph. Okay. As I had mentioned earlier, Pivoter as well as the other works, which are KCList, CountClicks, these are based on this algorithm, enumeration algorithm of Chiba-Nishizaki. So it would be useful for us to look at what this algorithm does. So it's a recursive backtracking algorithm that visits every clique. So suppose we are given this graph. It gives an ordering to the vertices of the graph. and orients the edges from lower vertices to higher vertices. So in this way, it converts it into a DAG. And now one can show that counting the number of k cliques in the original graph is equivalent to counting the number of k minus 1 cliques in the out neighborhood of each vertex. So now we'll spawn a branch for every vertex in the graph, look at its out neighborhoods, and now we're interested in counting the number of k minus 1 cliques in these out neighborhoods. So notice that we are now dealing with the same problem that we started with, just on a smaller instance and for a smaller k. So what does the algorithm do? It recurses. So which means that for each of these subgraphs, for every vertex in these out neighborhoods, it is now going to spawn a branch, calculate new out neighborhoods. And now in these new out neighborhoods, the algorithm is interested in counting the number of k minus 2 cliques, and so on. And so this process continues until there are no more out neighborhoods left. And this resultant structure is what is called as the recursive enumeration tree. So this tree, it has certain properties. At level 1, we have all cliques of size 1. At level 2, we have all cliques of size 2. So basically, the way to interpret this is that any path from root to any node in this tree represents a unique clique from the original graph. So for example, I've highlighted the clique 1, 5, 6, and 8, and I've shown the path that represents this clique. And basically, there's a one-to-one correspondence between the cliques that are represented by this enumeration forest and the cliques in the original graph. So all nodes at level 1 represent cliques of size 1. All nodes at level 2 represent cliques of size 2, and so on. Moreover, every vertex here, every node, every blue node that I've shown here is actually a recursive call that the algorithm makes. So which means that the total number of recursive calls that the algorithm makes is equal to the number of cliques in the graph. And now, given that we've had graphs that have had cliques of the order of 10 to the 40, constructing this entire forest is not feasible for such graphs. And so, which is why other methods, they try to use parallelism. So essentially, they parallelize the construction of these trees, and also they truncate at a particular k. So they're able to get k-clique counts up to that k and not beyond that. So that's how these other algorithms try to address this combinatorial explosion that happens. But we wanted to ask a more fundamental question, which is, can we count without enumerating? So as a first attempt, one might think of using maximal cliques. So what are maximal cliques? Maximal cliques are cliques that cannot be increased further. So here 1, 5, 6, and 8 is a maximal clique, 2, 3 is a maximal clique, 3, 4, 5 is a maximal clique, and so on. Efficient algorithms for finding maximal cliques have existed since a long time. And indeed, one of the techniques that we use, which is pivoting, was actually used in one of these algorithms for counting maximal cliques. So one might think that given a maximal clique, say of size S, if I want to count the number of k cliques in that, there's exactly S choose k cliques in it. So if I have an efficient way of getting all maximal cliques in the given graph, don't I then have an efficient way for getting all k cliques by simply using this formula on every maximal clique? The problem is, so if the graph consists of disjoint set of maximal cliques, then we're good. But real world graphs, they consist of many maximal cliques that overlap in complicated ways. And so what happens is, this triangle that I've highlighted in the center, it is a part of this maximal clique that I've highlighted in red. It is also a part of this maximal clique. and it is a part of this maximal clique. So which means that if I have to use this formula-based method on maximal cliques, then I would have to keep track of whether I have counted this triangle earlier or not as part of some other maximal clique. Essentially, what I would have to do is inclusion exclusion, which can be expensive. And so it is not obvious how we can use maximal cliques to get the count of all key cliques. So we are back where we started. What do? We use an idea called pivoting. So the problem with enumeration was that there were simply too many recursive calls. We use the idea of pivoting to compress this forest. So we want to make fewer recursive calls, but at the same time, we want to keep track of how much we have compressed so that we can account for every clique exactly once. So what does pivoting do? So recall that in the case of clique enumeration, we explored the out neighborhood of every vertex. What pivoting says is that there is a way of ordering the vertices such that some of the trees can be folded into the out neighborhood of a pivot vertex. And those trees that were folded in, they need not be explored. And I'll explain what I mean through an example. So say I'm given this toy graph. I pick a pivot. So in this case, let's say I pick vertex 1. The ordering that I'm going to use is as follows. I'm going to order the non-neighbors of 1, followed by 1, followed by the neighbors of 1. So which means that the resultant DAG would look like this. The non-neighbors of 1, followed by 1, followed by the neighbors of 1. And now what enumeration would have done is that it would have looked at the out neighborhoods of each of these vertices. But we notice that the tree of 5 is actually contained in the out neighborhood of 1. The tree of 6 is contained in the out neighborhood of 1. The tree of 8 is contained in the out neighborhood of 1. And this is precisely because of the fact that all of the vertices that are following 1 are neighbors of 1. So any clique that we discover amongst the neighbors of 1 will also form a clique with 1. So any clique that would have been discovered by the enumeration algorithm in the trees of 5, 6, or 8 would also be discovered in the out neighborhood of 1. So that suggests that we need not explore the cliques coming from these neighbors of 1. We only need to look at the cliques coming from the out neighborhood of 1. And now we'll treat 1 as a special vertex, meaning that for any clique discovered in the out neighborhood of 1, we are going to count it twice. Once when we are going to add 1 to it, and once when we are not going to add 1 to it. And in both cases, it's going to represent a unique clique. When we add 1 to it, it represents a clique that enumeration algorithm would have discovered in the tree of 1. And if we don't add 1 to it, then that would represent a clique that the enumeration algorithm would have discovered in the trees of one of the neighbors of 1. So we treat the vertex 1 as a special vertex, or rather as a yes-no switch to the question, do we want to include this vertex in the clique or not? Yes gives a clique from the tree of 1, and no gives a clique that enumeration algorithm would have discovered from the trees of one of the neighbors of 1. So if we apply this at every recursive call, so remember that at every recursive call, we have basically the same situation. We have some subgraph that we are interested in counting the number of k-cliques for. And so we apply this at every recursive call, and the resultant structure that we get is what is called as the succinct clique tree. So where the enumeration forest looks as what I've shown on the top, the SCT looks as what I've shown at the bottom. As we can see, there are far fewer recursive calls and hence this tree is much smaller. And this is basically where the savings in time come from. And this was a small toy graph that I took, but one can imagine that for a bigger graph with bigger cliques in it, the savings are actually quite substantial. So this SCT, the way to interpret it is that for any path of the SCT, every unique set of yes/no decisions that we can make on that path gives us a unique clique from the original graph. So for example, let's say I'm looking at the path 4, 5, and 6. So remember that with the green vertices, I don't have a choice. There's no decision to be made. I have to include those vertices in the graph in the clique. But with 5 and 6 here, because they're red, I have a choice. So if I make the choice yes, yes for both of these, then I get the clique 4, 5, 6. If I say yes, no, then I get the clique 4, 5. No, yes gives me the clique 4, 6, and no, no would give the clique 4. And that's essentially how we interpret this SCT. So it has what we call as the unique clique encoding property, which is that every set of yes/no decisions on every path from the SCT corresponds to a unique clique from the given graph. And it's also true in the other direction, that for every clique in the graph, there's exactly one path in the SCT and exactly one set of yes/no decisions on that path that gives us that clique. Essentially, there's a bijection between the cliques in the given graph and the cliques that we get from this SCT with the counting scheme that we have imposed on top of it. So once the SCT is generated, we simply calculate the number of all combinations of yes/no decisions that we can make on that path using formulas. So for example, if I have a path of size 7, and let's say there are 3 green vertices and 4 red vertices on this path, if I'm interested in counting the number of 5 cliques, remember that I don't have a choice with respect to the green vertices. I have to necessarily take those. So of the 5 vertices that I'm looking for, I've already discovered 3, and the remaining 2 vertices can be chosen from the 4 red vertices in 4 choose 2 ways. So that's how many 5 cliques are supplied by this path. So if I do this calculation for every path, I will have basically got the total number of 5 cliques in the given graph. So that's for the global counts. And for local counts, so local counting in general is harder than global counting. If you have local counts, you have global counts, but if you have global counts, you don't necessarily have local counts. And because most of the parallel methods out there, they have been doing enumeration. And so what happens is, first of all, because it's a parallel method, for every thread, you have to maintain a copy of the result structure. And especially if you're counting the number of k cliques that every edge is involved in, this result structure can be pretty large. And so replicating that for every thread can involve quite a lot of overhead. And approximation algorithms also do not do well for getting local counts, because for every vertex, to get the k-clique counts that vertex is involved in the out neighborhood of that vertex, we would have to take a number of samples to get convergence. So essentially, the number of samples that we end up taking would be very, very large. And another problem with enumeration is that because enumeration is discovering every clique one at a time, every time we discover a clique, we would be updating these counts of local cliques. Whereas in the case of Pivoter, because we are discovering multiple cliques at once, we can do bulk updates. So which means that the number of updates that happen are less, and which is why we can finish them within reasonable time. So the running time analysis is actually similar to that of maximal clique counting. So one of the follow-up papers to the original paper that introduced the idea of pivoting, they showed that, so they used pivoting for counting maximal cliques, and they showed that if we pick the pivot to be the max degree vertex in that subgraph, then one can show that the algorithm runs in time n times 3 to the n over 3. And so the recurrence that this comes from is as follows. So basically, we know that if the pivot is the highest degree vertex in that subgraph, then we know that the degree of each of the non-neighbors is at most the degree of the pivot. So suppose the degree of the pivot is n minus q. So which means that the non-neighbors and the pivot together are q. And remember that there are calls being made, recursive calls being made only for the non-neighbors and the pivot. We do not make recursive calls for the neighbors. So which means that there are a total of q calls being made. Each of those calls is of size at most n minus q. So size of each subproblem that's going to be created is n minus q. And so the resultant recurrence, so if we let Tn be the worst case running time for a problem of size n, then Tn is simply, Tn is less than the max overall q of q times t of n minus q, because there are q subproblems created, each of size at most n minus q, plus O of n squared. This O of n squared work is required to build the subgraph at each level. And one can show that the solution for this is 3 to the n over 3. This analysis is actually tight. We can show that the size of the SCT has to be at least equal to the number of maximal cliques in the graph. And there actually exist graphs that have 3 to the n over 3 maximal cliques. These are called Moon-Moser graphs. And so the analysis here is tight. And our final theorem looks as follows. So Pivoter can obtain all global per vertex and per edge k-clique counts in time n alpha 3 to the alpha over 3, where alpha is the degeneracy. Alpha is takes the value at most n. And for for per vertex and per edge, we simply multiply by alpha and alpha square. And all of this can be done in time, in space alpha square. So extra space. By extra space, I mean in addition to what is required to store the input and the output. So essentially what we do is that we build a tree, basically do all the counting that we have to do with that tree. And then once that is done, we can discard that tree. We don't need to store it. And we can move on to the next tree. So at any point, we only need about alpha square extra space. So there are some interesting observations that have come out of this, which is that, so here every blue dot that I have shown corresponds to a real world graph that we tried for. The x-axis shows the number of edges on a log scale. Then the y-axis shows the size of the SCT. So the number of nodes in the SCT on a log scale again. And as we can see, the size of the SCT is roughly proportional to the number of edges in the graph. And so this clearly indicates that these are not worst case graphs, which is one reason why the algorithm is working so well in practice. And so one question that this begs is, what is the structure of these real world graphs that is resulting in the SCT being so small? So if we understand that structure better, then we may be able to design faster algorithms for other tasks on these graphs. In terms of the practical results, as I had mentioned, so we compared with two of the algorithms. We compared with Turon Shadow and with KC-List, which again we had parallelized using 40 threads. We tried to count the number of 13 cliques for these 4 real-world graphs, and note that the number of max k is actually much larger than 13. But even just for k equals 13, these algorithms took a lot more time than the time it took for Pivoter to count not just the number of 13 cliques, but the number of all cliques. So, right, in many of the cases, we were able to get about 1000x speed up, if not more. There are some limitations of SCT. So if you're interested in counting the number of k cliques for a small k, in the case of Pivoter, what can happen is that we may have to end up discovering a significant part of the entire SCT before we are able to get the counts for all for this small k. So for small k, certain enumeration-based algorithms can actually end up performing better. But for larger k, there's, I mean, those other algorithms are not able to count for larger k. So to conclude, we presented an algorithm for clique counting that is able to count all k cliques in graphs with millions of nodes and edges. And it is orders of magnitude faster than even other parallel algorithms. And we showed that in the worst case, clique counting can be done in time n times 3 to the n over 3. One of the open questions, as I had mentioned, is what is the structure of real-world graphs that is leading to the SCT being small? And whether pivoting can be used to obtain faster algorithms for other subgraph counting problems like counting bicliques or counting k-plexes and so on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta. Any questions or comments for the speaker? Make sure you unmute your microphone if you have a question. Everyone is being very quiet. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anyone with any questions at this time.
Question I can ask, like.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Maji.
Does this approach extend to biclique counts as well? Like if you can count bicliques?
I think it can be extended, yes.
Because some of the recursive structures are not monotone in that relation.
Exactly. Yes. So there will be some modifications we'll have to do, but essentially the idea that, you know, I think this ordering based thing where the cliques that the later vertices are a part of, they are contained in some bigger clique. I think that part is still similar to biclique. So I believe that this can be extended, although we've not worked out all the details yet.
Can you give me one example where this could be useful? I'm just curious, or has this been well studied? I'm just curious about that problem. About
pivoting or about bicliques?
Bicliques.
An example where bicliques have been used, or?
A practical example where biclique counting will be of interest.
Okay. I mean, I think there are examples. So for example, I believe in graphs that represent like bipartite graphs or graphs that represent, you know, objects and then people and making recommendations and so on. One of the things that one could do is look at the number of bicliques that a particular vertex is involved in and use that to somehow, or let's say the number of bicliques that a person and an object is involved in, and use that as some kind of score, some kind of weight to, you know, recommend items and so on.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Please, any other questions for the speaker? Okay, I think also if you look on our seminar page and you want to get a hold of Shweta, I think we've linked her personal page there, so she might be able to answer any future questions offline. But I'd like to go ahead and thank Shweta for joining us today and presenting. If you want to stay in touch with our seminar series, we've been doing this bi-weekly. So we hope that you'll join us again in a couple weeks. And with that, I'd like to thank Shweta again for presenting today. And we'll hope to see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, yes, thank you. Everybody stay healthy and safe.